Hello again. This is the second attempt at doing a live video. The first one I was sideways. I've got no idea why I was sideways. So for some reason something's changed with my iPad. So I'm filming this in portrait rather than landscape mode. If you're watching this, you know that I've set up a new group for the Stitch Along for MH 1656, My Beloved's Gift. I wanted to touch base with you now. I know it's a month before the official start date of November the 1st, but we have to do some preparation. And preparation is very, very important when we're starting a project. So the first thing we need to do is to look at supplies. Now, in the booklet, I didn't specify a brand or a colour of linen. I want you to be free to choose your own linen for this project. There seems to be such huge pressure on people to stitch just a particular type of linen, and it shouldn't be like that. You should be stitching this project on whatever fabric works for you and for the count that works for you and the colour that appeals to you. But for those who want to stitch MH as close to the original as possible, I have specified in the booklet that the linen on the original is closest in colour to DMC shades 3045 and 167. Now, the original sampler was stitched on an even weave linen and it measures 5.25 by 36 inches. If we go for 46 count linen, it will measure 5.65 by 40.39. So that's 0.4 of an inch wider and 4.39 inches longer. Now that's the closest. Now, I've never stitched a whole sampler on 46 count linen. So my personal challenge for this project is stitching on 46 count. Now we have company. I had to upgrade my glasses, and when I was in the States I picked up a pair of readers that was stronger than my normal embroidery glasses, and that's helping me, but my eyes are taking a little bit of time to adjust to the 46 count, but every stitching session it's getting easier. Now, the other reason why I wanted to stitch 46 count was because I wanted to use the Over Soir 103 silks, which are absolutely gorgeous to use. But if you stitch this sampler on 40 count, 36 count, 32 count, it's going to be just as beautiful, and you must stitch on what you are comfortable working on. It's got to be enjoyable. Now, I'm not going to tell you what brand or colour of linen I chose for MH, but I will show you. And this is the colour that I chose, and if I put a little bit of white paper against it, you can see the colour a little bit better. That's a tip. If ever you want to photograph your work and try and get a true reflection of the colour, if you put a piece of white paper in the shot, it will show the colours a lot truer. Now, going back to silks and threads, I practiced and experimented on a doodle cloth, and I decided that I was going to use the 103 for everything except the satin stitches. For the satin stitches, I'm going to use the Dalgé. So my supplies for MH are this beautiful pack of 103, and my d'Alger, which I have on the good old Floss Away bags. I don't think you can beat this storage system for when you're actually working on a project. There are thread packs available in many stores. The stores that I know that have these special packs in these lovely little bags are the Attic Needleworks in Mesa, Arizona, and Sassy Jack Stitchery in Weaversville, North Carolina. But I'm sure there are many other stores that are carrying these. And if there's any store owners watching, please post in the group that you are carrying supplies. Now, I've not used these before for a whole project. I've played with them, but never actually stitched properly with them. So I, as always, have been using a doodle cloth to experiment. And the first thing that I found when I was using the 103, that the traditional number 28 tapestry needle isn't actually right for these threads. So what I did, I contacted Access Commodities and I asked their advice. And Lamora at Access was very kind. She wrote back to me, and I'm going to read you part of the email. She says that she prefers to use a Bowen Crewel number 10 needle with the 103. And she says that if you're going to stitch on very high cants, higher than 56, that she would recommend a Bowen Textile Conservation needle, and the stock number is BOR-12. The needle that I experimented with is just a sharp number 10, and what I would like to do is show you, where's my needle? Oh, it's difficult for you to see. You can see the eye is much smaller. Don't know how I can bring that in where it stays in focus. Okay, but you can see the difference in the eye. And what I have found that when I was using the sharp needle, it took a little bit of getting used to, and I had a few finger pricks. But what Lamora goes on to say, and I thought this was really interesting, is that if you make a study of needles that were available in the 17th century, you would find that a sharp point was preferable, even when stitching in hand. Furthermore, if you care about the finished look of the stitches, you will find a sharp needle gives a much better finished look because the point of the needle gradually opens the linen to receive the thread and then closes back over the opening, whereas a tapestry point needle is like stabbing the linen with a tiny railroad spike, and the holes that are made do not close back over as evenly. And I'd never thought of that before, but anyway, I'm very comfortable after some practice using the sharp needle. And I'm going to sidetrack here a little bit because when I have done rows of double running stitch, I've always tended to stitch or lay my stitches so that I would come up to the one side of the stitch and then come down to the other side, creating a rope-like effect. But when you're using a sharp, you can easily split the stitches. And I found that when I was using the 103, it actually looks slightly nicer splitting the stitches on my return journey with the double running stitch. But again, this is something for you to experiment with on your doodle cloth before you start stitching the sampler. What you don't want to do is start one way and throughout the sampler change to a different way. So practice beforehand on your doodle cloth. Of course, if you're not using 46 count, you're using something below, you wouldn't really want to stitch with 103 because it won't give you the coverage that you need, or that's my personal opinion. Maybe I should have said that experiment, you might like the coverage it gives on a lower count, but personally for me, under 46 count, there wasn't enough coverage. The reason I'm going to use the Dalgé for the satin stitches is that I think that satin stitches look so beautiful stitched in the Dalgé. To me it was a smoother finish, but again that's very much a personal choice. Now the other thing I think that is a good idea to have if you're starting this project is Amy Mittens or Topsy of the Montenegrin stitch. We're going to be doing a lot of Montenegrin stitch when we get to the latter part of this sampler. If you haven't seen this little book before, it is amazing. It's such a clever idea. And basically what Amy does in the index, you've got all these little arrows. Now these show the stitch path or the direction of the stitch that you're making. So for example, if we want to go to and stitch in this orientation or direction, we go to page 31, and then when we hit page 31, which we will get to in a second, that shows us the stitch path. You will find this little book invaluable for this project and many other projects, so it's a good book to pick up. It was out of print for a very long time, but Amy very kindly republished this book, and it's available on Amy Mitten's own website, but there's lots of stores including Sassy Jack's and the Attic that have this in stock. And the other book which I could never be without is The Proper Stitch. This is another very good book that's worth having if you're going to be stitching this project and other band samplers as well. Let's have a little think about what we need. Now, with regards to linen, I know that the Attic and Sassy Jack's have got special cuts of linen for this project, and they've had linen dyed especially, but I'm sure there are many other stores that have done the same, and please, store owners, post in the group if you are carrying special cuts of linen for this project, or email me so that I know. I can't mention your store name if you haven't let me know that you are carrying the product. Right, so what you should be doing now is buying your supplies and preparing your supplies. When I get a new piece of linen, I always want to make certain that it's been cut correctly. And if you go onto my YouTube channel, there is a video that shows you how you can check that your linen has been cut so that it's squared up properly. If your linen's not serged, you need to think about serging your linen. And by serging linen, what I mean is if you have a cut edge, that you run a zigzag stitch down the side to stop it fraying, or if you haven't got a sewing machine, if you just turn the fabric over and tack it down. Now you'll notice that on my model, I have basted out two guidelines for the margin, and I'm going to catch the light again so you can see that I've done that. Now because MH is stitched over 3, I've actually basted those lines in groups of 3, and it's important to do this. This is a very long sampler, and as you're working down, you want to keep your edges in the correct position. And with MH, she occasionally didn't start in a straight edge, and what you'll find is that when you're stitching the sampler, that she went off by threads at the start of her project. And what I've done, she went off by a thread or a few threads, both on the horizontal and the vertical. And what I did on the chart was I used this little finger mark when you had to watch your starting position. And that means that it could be off by a thread or more than one thread on the horizontal or the vertical. Now, if you have your line basted out along the side, that gives you a fixed reference point to be working from. So though it might seem a little bit of a flaff stitching out 40 inches of basting lines down both sides, it will pay dividends as you're working on this project. What else? What else? This stitch along, I'm not going to be writing extensive stitching notes. Basically, I'm going to be sharing with you my progress band by band each month. And if I come to something that I think is a little bit tricky, I will post what I came across, what my solution was, and how I stitched it. But if you come across something that you need help with, you can raise it in the group, or you can email me or Facebook message me privately, and I will help you. Nobody is to feel alone on this project, and if the level of help that is naturally posted each month isn't enough for you, don't hesitate. You contact me in the ways I've just said. I don't think the project is going to be difficult for you. I think that the graph is well laid out for you to follow, but you know, you do have to do some thinking for yourself on this project. The very first row will make you stop and think. Now, the first row is this little line across here, which is made up, each one of those is made up of, on the front, 3 straight stitches over 3. But this is a reversible sampler. You want the front to look like this, and you also want the back to look like this as well. And I want you, in these next few weeks before we start this project, to think about how you're going to achieve that. My father always said to me, if I wanted to know how to spell a word, I had to look it up in the dictionary, because that was the way I would remember it. So whilst I'm going to post the stitch path for you to follow when the stitch along starts 1st of November, between now and then I would like you to think about how you would stitch this so that it is reversible, that little band. So just think about it. It looks simple, but when you start, you do realise that that is a little bit of a puzzle, but there will be an answer from me. But also, I find in life that there's many different ways of doing things. We all have our own methods. I found the way I've done that, but you might come up with a better way. So ladies and gentlemen, have a think about it, and when I post, or actually, why don't you post about the solution that you find for stitching that little dividing row so that it is truly reversible. What else? What else? This is the trouble with doing live videos. You can't edit it, you can't stop and think. I think I've probably covered everything that I wanted to say for now, but I will pop back in between now and the start of the stitch along. You might be thinking, why have I started the project? Well, I've got to work ahead of everybody if I'm going to be posting the first of the month the band that we're all going to be working on, and I've had to do a few bands because between now and really end of March I'm here, there and everywhere, so I wanted to make sure that I had plenty posted for you. So to recap, on your doodle cloths, decide how you're going to lay your double running stitches, whether you're going to split them or lay them side by side so you're creating a rope-like effect, and have a little think about that first dividing row. It would be really good if you could post in the group what linen you have chosen to stitch this on, both the count, the brand and the colour, and what threads you're using. I'm looking forward to this journey with you, and at the end of it we're going to have a really, really beautiful sampler to hang on our sampler walls. Anyway, for now, bye bye.